time to take action. Now's the time to do more and be more.
Such an awkward way to start, isn't it? Every single time, it's never normal.
Yeah.
Welcome back, Casey.
Thank you.
How you been?
I've been good.
Good, man.
Very busy, but enjoying everything.
Yeah, you're almost there. Test in December, right?
Yep. Test in December. Get off probation, but it's been a lot of fun. Really enjoying
Good, man. We're happy to have you back in the studio. We're happy to be back in the studio, and today happy to have our good buddy Dave Haas, who was the very first guest on the Tango One podcast. So we're throwing it back. It's not Thursday, it's Wednesday, but we're throwing it back today. So thanks for coming in, Dave.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me.
So you guys who don't know Dave and I have been friends since high school, and really locked down our friendship when he was, not when he was, because he still is the owner of the treehouse, but when we started, I started working there as a cop, and Dave was the bar owner there, and obviously our services went hand in hand a lot as we drew a lot of people out of here back in the wild days of Old Avenue. But Dave and I have stayed real tight-knit friends, stayed at each other's weddings. He's the owner of treehouse, like I said, but he's also the owner of Lungovita Beach Retreat, which is an amazing place we just went to. I want to talk about that a lot today. And, he's a spiritual mentor, a personal achievement specialist, whatever you want to call it. But he helps men and women achieve their outer success that they want by doing a lot of inner work.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, right? So welcome to the show, Dave.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me. Great to be back. Your podcast has come a long way, and the last chat was great, and looking forward to it again today.
Yeah, this is episode 60 something. I don't know which one this will be by the time we release it, but we're in like 62, 63 area. Which is pretty crazy. Like considering we kind of we thought we were gonna do like one a week, and then we enjoyed it so much, and it just kind of goes like with the kind of stuff you talk about. Is if you're doing what you like, you just kind of keep doing it.
Yeah. And I talk a lot to like my clients and people about like being in the field, and it's like once you're in the field of like doing a podcast, then you just keep doing more podcasts, and you start figuring out what works and what doesn't. You try different camera angles, and you release it in different platforms. But then when you get out of the field, and then all of a sudden you don't have that same inspiration. But when you're in the field of podcasts, you're like, oh, this guy would be a good guest, and we can talk about this on the podcast, because you're in the field of actually doing it, right? So a lot of things that happen, when you stay in a field, like field fitness, and then you're like, oh, this would be a cool workout. But as soon as you step away from it and you're not in the field anymore, it's a lot harder to get that momentum going again, right? So you and I both with our podcast, it's like, but for me, I release a lot of content on like social media and stuff, and because I'm always in the field of thinking about new content, it's like just always on my mind. Like I'll be reading a book and be like, oh, that'd be a good quote, right?
Yeah.
And then so I'm writing it down, right? So it's like, it's just like, I think I don't know why I went on to this, but obviously it's for some reason. The listener is like, if you're trying to start a new business, or you want to get into exercise or fitness or whatever it may be, you have to be the field. It's like what I eventually tell people. It's like you can't just kind of stick your toe in. And it's like if you just jump all in, the inspiration, the how-to, all that stuff is going to be revealed to you. It's like, you want to start a podcast? Well, be the field. Go get a microphone and start recording, and then eventually you'll just learn all of the how through the process. And you and I are exact examples of that. Like we both had no clue what we were doing when we started our podcast, and now you were both I think my podcast is almost episode 100, and and you've been on a couple times, and you're in the 60s. It's like, and I forget. The thing that's funny about podcasts is you kind of forget like that people are listening.
Because you get caught up in the like, okay, how can we make it sound better? You're not even really listening to content so much as you're like, how do I sound better? How do I put my words in a better format? How do I do this? How do we pick proper topics, all this stuff? And then all of a sudden you get feedback from someone. You're like, oh yeah, you heard that.
Yeah, right. 100%.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's like, you're sitting in the studio here and you're just having a conversation amongst friends, which is great. But then, there might just be one takeaway that someone gets. And, I kind of got out of the field, and I think you were in the same place, like of making podcasts. I was busy opening up Lungovita, and, I wasn't making podcasts as much. And then someone came up to me the other day and were like, man, I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. And I was like, oh shit, maybe I should get back on making that podcast. So you you forget about the connection that you have. Because with podcasts, you don't get as much feedback as you do with like social media posts and that kind of thing.
Right. And you kind of, you get so enamored some days with like, how many listens did that episode get? But like, really, as long as like the right 10 people or the right 25 or 50, whatever that is for your audience, like got the message and like got something from it positive, I guess that's at the end of the day what it's all about. And it was funny, we were talking force flow, and we were also talking homeschool. And this kind of reminds me, the conversation was watching my boys like right now going through this homeschooling thing and being a kid who didn't really enjoy school or like school. And I've been reading obviously on how we can do a better job with the unschooling or however you want to call this. And it's like, was I really not good at this and this in school, or was I just not interested? And then you talk about fields and like forced flow or like your steady flow. It's like, well, I was always really interested in gym. The only like real class I took in high school, like past grade 11, was accounting and business with Mr. Kane.
Mm-hmm.
And look where I end up, right? It's like, I was trying to force, well, not I was trying to, maybe the teachers, the education system was getting me into like some things I just didn't enjoy. And the things that I enjoy end up kind of following me through and dealing with people. The podcast, policing, this job. It's really kind of cool when you look back at it that way. And then I'm like looking at my children, and my oldest definitely seems to be like in the like school would be great for him because he loves like math and English and things I hated. While the little guy, he's kind of like, I don't know, he's kind of like the same thing as me, just likes being around people and run around. So it's cool. It's a cool situation. It's cool to look at it as you looking back as like mini me's are growing, and you're in that situation. You're approaching that in the next year or two, and it's fun to watch, man.
Yeah, and the whole homeschool thing is starting to gain popularity, and especially with like the state of the world and everything, and the way it's looking for me is like my kid is probably gonna have to be homeschooled as well. And Tony and I were talking before. And it's like it's funny when I'm thinking about homeschool, I would have to hire a teacher because I'm just too busy to be doing the teaching on my own. My wife's too busy. And I'm like, man, how would we find like a really good teacher? And then when you throw your kid into school, you don't ever consider like what the teacher's like. I'm sure you do, but it's like, is this whoever's teaching grade 3 is who's teaching grade 3? It's like you don't have that much of a say in it. So it kind of like makes you like kind of made me take a step back and be like, that's interesting. I'm just kind of was willing to just put my kid in school and trust the kid to the school system, which this is no backlash.
There's so many great teachers.
So many, like my teachers like shaped my life, like some of my teachers. So, but it just made me realize like, if I ever do put her in school or if I homeschool her, I'm really going to consider like who is teaching her, what are they teaching her. Right. And, whereas before, I don't think that was even in my awareness. It was just like, go to school.
And just being able to kind of choose your curriculum, right? Like it's so
that's
they talk about so much how like everybody's so different and everyone thinks in different ways or has different interests. So it's like, but yet you still have that school system that we're all brought up on. But it's like you have that same school system that everybody takes these 6 classes in grade 3, right? There's no special class for this individual or this individual that has an interest in has an overall interest in fitness, for example. It's not an option for you to take that besides from your one gym class of the day, right? So it's like being able to homeschool your kids or take them into your own kind of schooling system is like you can guide, like you said, your kid has an interest in something, push them down that path, right? Because then they're going to be interested in it, they're going to spend more time in it, and then hopefully be more successful in it than forcing 5 out of 6 classes they don't want to be in, right? It gives you that false kind of sense of education because you're like, I was there. You feel kind of dumb because you're like, I don't like this stuff. It's not that I don't understand it. I'm not interested in it, so I don't want to spend time on it.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and it's like that goes to like to the point of like play your strengths and fuck your weaknesses. Lean in. Yeah, it's like we get so obsessed with our weaknesses and trying to make our weaknesses better, but it's like, well, fuck your weaknesses. It's like just like lean into what you're good at, and for me, it was like I would be an example of like the school system failing somebody. Like I was a kid, we're talking about programs and your struggles and these types of things. Where we want to head the podcast, but like, I was a kid that basically was like stupid. Like I was dumb, and it's like one of the big things I had to overcome is like the guilt or the feeling of not being good enough because I didn't conform to the way they were teaching everyone else, right? So granted, to the testing in my school, they recognized it, they pulled me out and put me into like special learning and do whatever, and but now if anyone, I think I don't feel stupid now. But I think if anyone that you talk to would say, "What do you think about Dave Haas?" They'd be like, "Oh, smart businessman, whatever." They wouldn't say I'm stupid, right? But the school system essentially, if I mean,
everybody who knew you in the early 2000s, like in our group, might
might say. Maybe. Looking back, I mean, there's definitely some stupid things that I did back then.
Yeah.
But I mean, as far as the way I was being taught, that just wasn't the way I thought learning was best for me. I've always been a hands-on type of person, and so that's the way I learned best, right? But none of that was really given in school, right? Same would be like excelled in like gym and these types of things. But when it came to reading, writing, these types of things, where I was clueless. Math I was better at, but like a lot of what I had to overcome in my life was about like the guilt and the shame that I felt from being like a poor student, and there's a lot of my clients that I deal with that have to overcome like the shame surrounding like failing and grading back when they used to fail people.
Right. They don't do that anymore.
There's just so much shame that's associated with it. Like a big thing that I had to overcome was like, granted, it was great that they recognized that I was struggling with like reading and writing, and they pulled me out and like gave me additional attention. But also like as a kid, like that's embarrassing as fuck, to be like called out, and even though they did it subtly and whatever, but to be called out and be like, oh yeah, hey Dave, it's time to go to your special ed class,
Yeah.
And so a big thing of like, a big part of like one of my biggest struggles that I talk about is like self-doubt, which on the surface people wouldn't think that I have self-doubt, right? But one of the things that I really had to overcome was like that self-doubt that was installed in me from like a really young age. Is like, you're not smart enough, right? You're not like all the other kids. So I'm constantly questioning myself, which ends up being like a barrier to me succeeding in life. Now, granted, I've done a ton of work to become free of that, right? But these programs get installed like at like a really young age, and the school system is one of them, because those are such influential ages, like 0 to 12. So, and it's like commendable, like what you're doing with your kids, Tony, because you're doing what I think needs to be done more of, is like leaning into like what are the kids really good at, and like let's focus on that. And if they're not great readers, well, okay, no big deal. Let's focus.
I mean, I didn't take them out of lack of confidence in the school system. I entered in a shout out to any teacher that's there. My kids loved it, and I don't think we'd be in the shape we were in if they weren't there for that little bit. It's the current situation and what I'm not willing to have them do, and it's not like you guys, everybody do what you want. I support that fully, but don't really believe my children. I want them sitting in a classroom with the mask on. Like that's something that we believe in wholeheartedly. And and leaning in and watching them, and it's given us a great opportunity. I pulled in my driveway today right before I came back here for the podcast, and Colt's out there, and he's my oldest, and he's wearing his little hoodie that you got. I'm actually the Eagles hoodie. He's got his like basketball shorts on. He's throwing a football around, and I'm like, man, this boy looks like he's 12 years old. And then I just felt so instantly grateful that despite all this craziness going on in the world, and putting this schooling thing and our unschooling or homeschooling on our plate, that I'm just able to spend way more time with my kids right now while they're here, and before they become, like Irv, who's filming this right now, has got a teenager like that. There's going to be a point where you're going to start to push away a little bit probably right now, and I want to value this time. Out of curiosity, with 3 Villanova people in here though, who was mine was Mr. Kane. I ran into him at Turtle Club like a month ago, gave me a big hug. It was so great to see him. Mr. Kane, like I don't think I had a lot of things. He was a reference for the police department. He helped me with business and sports and everything. He was mine. Who was yours?
Dave Haas.
Yeah,
I still see him.
Such a nice guy.
He was a great guy. Yeah, he was always like a support for me, and even like in OAC calculus.
Yeah, he taught all those hard classes.
Yeah,
I never knew him.
Yeah. But like I did this both in college and university and high school. Like the last semester, I basically checked out, right? And so I'm pretty positive he just passed me up.
What's in his band? Was it a good shot? Big Wiggle? Yeah. What about you behind the camera there? Villanova guy.
Several. Mr. Crab, Miss Harrison.
Harrison's awesome.
And Miss Bastien.
Right on.
All great people. And in case I know you're a jock like me, it's going to be the football coach for sure. Just like mine was, right?
Tyler Hankinson, Tom Ed, and a lot of those guys just had such a big impact, like even in school. But that was something I want to so you've talked about how not avoid your weaknesses, but fuck your weaknesses, work on things you're good at. But what do you do or tell people that let's look at it as simple as, here's your curriculum for the year. Mm-hmm. You have these 6 classes. I don't enjoy 4 of them, but I have to succeed in them in order to move forward. So how do you change your mindset from I'm not good at this, I don't want to do it, to finding something within that class that you are interested in enough to allow you to succeed in it and push forward to it?
Yeah, I think everything is being, a big thing that people get really screwed up on is intention, right? And so it's like, if your intention, like let's just use business for example, if your intention is to make money in business, then every decision you make is going to be guided by that intention. So you're constantly going to be focused on getting, and while you may say on the surface, I really want to help my customers and whatever, what you're really trying to do is just make more money, right? So every decision you make is going to lean in that direction. So Casey, for you, you're a firefighter. It's like, if you have to take classes to become a firefighter, even though you don't like science, let's say for example, if the intention is to be a firefighter, then you just find a way to work through those things that you're not so great at, right? So you're always being pulled by your intention. It's like whereas when we're trying to force things, we're being pushed, right? We're pushing everything. But once you set a pure intention, then you don't have to really do anything after that. Like everything will just fall into place. Like you set the intention at some point in your life that you want to be a firefighter, and guess what? It happened. Yeah, you had to take classes, you had to work, and you had to do all these things, but you were just pulled throughout your whole entire life until finally you got hired as a firefighter, right? And at one point in my life, I set the intention that I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then everything led me in that direction. And now I'm setting the intention that I want to become enlightened, and everything is setting me in that direction, right?
So taking that time to set that bigger goal, or even that why do I have to take this class, and then that'll give you that motivation to just get through it and learn the things that you have.
I think so, and also it won't be as difficult either. It's like when you really understand your why. Like a big thing that we do, at Blast Camp, is we get people to understand why they're doing the things they're doing. A lot of people just go throughout their lives and they say, well, I wanted to become a firefighter, and they don't even really ever ask why I wanted to become a firefighter, right? And it was like, well, maybe there's this one moment of inspiration where firefighter came to your school, and you're like, oh my god, that was it. But then the why gets lost in well, it's a really good career and it has benefits, and I'm gonna get a lot of girls. I'm not saying that's your case, guys. I'm saying but those were some of my intentions behind becoming a bar owner, was because of the notoriety that went along with it, right? So the higher the level of consciousness your intention is, the more support you get from the universe, okay, or God, or whatever your belief system is. So when you set the intention like Tony has with wanting to help a bunch of people by putting on charitable events, you see how powerful that is. It's you guys are raising hundreds of thousands of dollars for charities, because you got a ton of support from this universal intelligence, essentially. But when your intentions are below the level of integrity, which is, I talk a lot about the scale of consciousness, and you can look up more about that with Dr. David Hawkins. But essentially, the scale of consciousness is there's this critical level that when you reach it, where everything completely shifts from force to flow. So anything below the level of 200, which is it's a logarithmic scale from 0 to 1,000, anything below the level of 200, it's just force. Your whole entire life is going to be a struggle, right? It's and these are states of shame, apathy, grief, guilt, fear, desire, anger, pride. These are the states of consciousness that are life is going to be a struggle. But there's this one critical element, one critical point, I should say, where everything completely transforms, and that's at the level of integrity, where you start having the courage to look within and figure out why all these things are happening to you, right? And at that point, you could describe it as water changing from ice to water. It was ice this whole time. It's ice, ice, ice. Then all of a sudden, 1 point of a degree changes, and that ice turns to water, right? So this is how powerful these shifts can be created. So when you start to align with higher states of consciousness, the state of consciousness of the willingness to give back, which we calibrate at 310, which is what you do with Garage Gym and all the charitable stuff. The support from the universe is just unimaginable. It's just things just happen, it's oh, you think to yourself, what we should really do is we should really figure out a prize to give away, like a grand prize. And then a day later you bump into a guy and says, you know what, I'm going to donate this. And you're like, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
It's there's no calling a guy and trying to, yeah,
they're falling in your lap.
100%. And Tony and I are up here, doing some planning, and we're like, how are we going to do this?
For a massive event.
Yeah, it's gonna be amazing, and it's gonna be transformational for a lot of people. But we're we got stuck on this one thing, because when we do these things together, there's this one thing that we do that's transformational. But now with the group getting bigger, we're how are we gonna still have that same connection? We're stuck in for a couple minutes, but because our intention isn't about making money. Yeah, we're going to make money doing this, but the intention is to really help people. Like that's the true intention. That's what we're being led by. Like we're sitting here for a couple minutes and then boom, the answer comes to us. Like there's no force, it's all just flowing and simple and effortless. So the other thing that I like using describing the consciousness is that there is no such thing as darkness. There's only the absence of light, right? So, when you get low on the scale of consciousness, there's like the grips of like shame and apathy, like the victim of the world. There's very little light, right? But as you learn to start moving up, there's more and more light. So it's not like there's this good and evil, this is like a big thing that's happening in the world right now. We think there's evil people and good people. It's just like at the low states of consciousness, there's just not a lot of, light or love or whatever you want to call it, right? So if you're connecting with those low states like desire or fear or anger, you want to really work on becoming free of them so that you can start aligning with these higher states of consciousness where, everything is easy. And, I know this is kind of like a point of contention between Tony and I in some ways, like, because I live my life where everything is easy and effortless but that doesn't mean I'm not working hard. It's just, I'm not labeling it as hard work, there's a thing that I've really been tuning into lately, which is your struggle should be like where you start. So basically, pick a point in your life where you're struggling, and like for me, it would be like diet, let's say, right? So even though I'm a vegetarian and I have a relatively decent diet, but like I struggle with like going on like sugar binges or drinking pop or whatever it may be. And what I read recently was that the reason that we struggle in life, where we're struggling, is because of the program that we took on, right? So at those critical ages of 0 to 12, we take on all these programs from society, from our friends, from our family. And if we're struggling in an area, it's just because we were not programmed properly to succeed in it, right? So this is why the rich get richer, because the rich program within their kids that money's abundant and it's effortless and easy to obtain, right? So those kids go into life thinking like, oh, I can make money, it's no problem. It's like it's already a program within them, right? Whereas my program with food, for example, my program is like there's no one that's going to take care of me. And if I don't take care of myself, no one else is going to. So I was never programmed to be like, you have to cook food, right? Like the way I fed myself as a kid was whatever was in the cupboard that I didn't have to cook because I was 9 years old doing this shit on my own. That's what I grabbed, and that program has stayed with me up until 43 years old, right? So now finally I'm coming into the awareness of this program, like, oh, where I'm struggling is with food. Why? Oh shit, because when I was 9 years old, when my mom died, I was kind of left on my own, and if you leave a 9-year-old in charge of his diet, how is he going to eat? He's going to eat sugar, he's going to eat candy, whatever gives him energy and fills him up and tastes good, right? And so that was a program
that can reach.
Right, it's really, and that was a program that I took on that I now have to overcome, right? And so once you understand what's at the root of why you're doing the things you do, you can really start to like break free from them, right? So, I'd be interested to see like where you guys feel like you're struggling in life. For me, diet and exercise, not exercise. Actually, exercise comes really natural to me, but diet for sure is where I'm struggling. I've overcome my money. We can get into that a little bit if we want. Money was a block for me for a long time. I was grinding and hustling. I learned how to overcome that. But my next real big struggle in life is this last one, I think, which is this diet element.
So is it kind of like you're basically saying your history really determines where your like struggles are when you dive into it, in the sense of like, for example, your boys are going to grow up and fitness is a way of life. It's a way of your day.
So
they're every day they're exposed to, we get outside, we move for at least an hour a day, or we're just constantly doing that. So they're going to go through life and probably never have as many issues with staying healthy or staying in shape because it's part of their routine.
100%.
Whereas if their parents or people around them never got active or forced them to be active, it's a bigger milestone to get up and go do that hours worth of work.
You're not programmed for success in it. You hit the nail on the head, right? Okay. Tony's kids are going to be jacked. We all know this. It's going to happen, right? So it's like, is this what's going to happen? It's because there's never going to be a hurdle or a program that they have to overcome. It's like going to be a part of who they are, right? So that's why when I heard this quote, and it's from this guy Bruce Lipton, and I'm not really too in tune to what he's been doing, but and when he said that, I was like, fuck, that hit home. I was like, that's it. Like that's where you got to start. It's like where you're struggling is a window that you can look through to see what it is that you need to become free of, right? In order to transcend that struggle. If you just keep trying to grind and hustle and outwork this program, it's going to be effort, a ton of it. And you're going to get discouraged and you're going to get beat down. I've been trying to break this pop addiction for fucking since I was 9 years old, literally. Like, you know, like, and I've recognized some of the things that were programmed into me, which were like, you know, pop and sugar and candy and things like that were like my source of happiness, you know? So it's like when things were going bad, I drank pop. When things were going good, I drank pop, right? Later in life, I turned it to alcohol, and then pop wasn't such a big deal. But then when I dropped the alcohol, I went right back to the pop, right? You know, so for me, like that is a program that I had to overcome. I also had to overcome the program of money though too, because, you know, this is like classic, you know, this how this will transport like look on the podcast, but like I would ask my dad like, I need to buy hockey equipment, right? So we would go to the sports store, National, where we were, I can't remember where we went, somewhere in that's like Reham Sports or something, I can't remember what it was called. Anyway, we'd go to the place and I'd be like, okay, I need these shin pads, right? And so I try them on, yeah, these are great. And then my dad would go, well, how much does it cost? and the guy would be like, oh, these are $149. Like this huge, like deep sigh, like every single dollar he spent, it was like the end of the fucking world, right? And so that was programmed into me. And what did it program into me? That money was scarce, right? There's not a lot of it, you know, and like, ooh, you got to hold on to your money tightly. And until I unprogrammed from that, you know, then everything changed with respect to money for me, right? So now I know, just with like this simple awareness, and this is the beauty of like just being aware. Like the awareness alone is enough to start the transformation, you know, and that's what we do a lot at Blast Camp, right? Is like we start creating awareness for people. Yeah.
Let's go there for a second.
Yeah.
So you mentioned a word that kind of like triggered what I'd like to bring up here. So enlightenment. So one of the things I say, and you're there towards the end of Blast Camp, but at the end of Blast Camp, I say like, you know, be aware that when you go home and you talk to, there might be some friends and some things that. There's some relationships that just won't be the same when you leave after you've conquered something or like ripped out some demons, like I like to say, or done some real hard work or developed a new skill set. That maybe like some of these relationships you're going to go to and they're not going to be the same. And the reason for that, I use the word enlightenment, but it's like it sounds like such an arrogant word. I guess it's like, where do you differentiate? Like, what do you deem as enlightenment? And that is true. Like, since I decided to kind of like not be consumed by a lot of the negative aspects that came with police work, it's a lot of those relationships that were very good friendships have just gone away. And you know what? And I'm not sad about it, and I don't wish ill will on any of those people by any means. But it's just, and it's enlightenment or the right word. I don't know. It's growth or going down to separate paths.
Yeah.
And it's just that's what's weird to me. And it's after Blast Camp, I see that happen to people, and you see that, or you see the opposite, like it melds people together. These like bonds that they make at Blast or similar events. So yeah, speak on that.
Well, I think that's like you know, it's funny. Like, you know, we sit here and we're like, what are we gonna talk about today? And it's like, and then we start getting into enlightenment. I think that's probably like one of the critical questions that the people that listen to this podcast need to understand is like, what is enlightenment essentially?
Yeah, we don't script these things.
Yeah, no, and it just flows, right? You know, so it's like we don't really know what we're talking about, but then we get to like, I think, which is like a really, really critical question is like, what is enlightenment essentially, right? And so I think what you're talking about with the guys at Blast Camp is awareness, right? We want to have awareness of our mind. So one critical element of new awarenesses is to come to the awareness that you are not your body and you are not your mind. And now this is a mind fuck for people, right? So like one of the things that I do with people is
just
like,
got Urban and Perkins head up back there. Gonna keep going.
Yeah, right. So it's like, so the reason that we know that, you know, so what are we then? I guess is the question. Essentially, we are the eternal etheric beings, meaning that life goes on forever, right? And so this physical form that we have here today is just like a moment, a different experience in life, a different experience in this overall consciousness. Now, the reason that we know that we are not our minds and not our bodies is because our mind controls our body, right? So you tell your body to stop moving, and you can freeze your body still, right? You tell your mind to stop moving, right? And it just keeps talking, right? It's like the mind is its own organ, right? And it just keeps doing what it is that we're doing. But we can take a step back from our minds and we can begin to observe. So, you know, an exercise I do with people, and if you're driving in your car, don't do this, but I make everyone close their eyes and I say, make your inner voice say hello, right? And then I say, make your inner voice say hello 3 times. You know, you can do it and then make your inner voice scream hello. And it's like, okay, what was it that allowed you to observe what you were thinking about, right? And so that is your consciousness, that is your soul, your etheric being. Okay, so ultimately, enlightenment is the transcending of the idea that you are your mind, right? So our ego, which is essentially just our mind unobserved, has played the ultimate trick on us, and it has made us believe that we are it, right? We are the mind and we are the body, but we are something greater than that, right? So when you learn to transcend that ego, you move into these high states of consciousness where a physical form is not even actually necessary anymore. So a lot of enlightened people, this is why they go and sit on a rock and never talk to anybody ever again, because there's no need to even be in the physical form. And actually, a lot of them choose to leave, meaning they let the physical body die and they stop eating, drinking, breathing, and then they move on to the next kind of realm. Right now, what you're talking about with what guys experience at Blast Camp is new levels of awareness. And what Buddha said was like, rare is it to even heard of enlightenment. Rarer still is it to pursue enlightenment as like a life goal. So there's pretty much like 0.001% of the population that are actually pursuing enlightenment as a life goal, right? But the great news is that if you just hear of enlightenment, did you listen to this podcast and maybe it's the first time you actually like really understood what enlightenment was, right? Which is the transcending of this idea that you are your mind and body, right? Learning to disconnect and become aware of, just like through that process that we did. Now that you realize that that potential exists, just with that awareness alone, you begin moving in that direction, just like that intention begins to pull you, right? So just to hear of enlightenment is a great step, but actually to pursue enlightenment is another amazing step in the right direction. But the great thing about this is that you don't have to get enlightened to start really like reaping the benefits of moving towards enlightenment, right? So it's like, as I started doing all this spiritual work, the scale is logarithmic, so 0 to 1,000. So the enlightened beings of our times, like the highest state you can reach in physical form is 1,000, and this is like Jesus, Krishna, Buddha. And the reason that I bring them up is because these are people that were at these advanced states of consciousness that were able to transform society based on their teachings, right? So for us to get to that level, it's not impossible, but it's going to be pretty rare.
Yeah, it's more.
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do.
Explain something to me. So this might sound like a dumb question, but so you're a spiritual guy. Very much like Jesus, Catholic, like Catholicism. Is that what we're?
Yeah, but I'm not tying myself to any religions.
Like that's what. So you mentioned Buddha. And
yeah.
I'm not super religious, but maybe I don't give myself enough credit for that. I am a little bit spiritual, but been reading tons of Buddha comes up like everywhere. I love this guy.
Yeah,
like this stuff that like when I'm reading that it's like old Buddhist proverb or all this and this. So Jesus and Buddha, like this both exist in your life, or is this just you're just or this is this are you viewing this might be way too deep of a question, but are you viewing this as the same person? It's just like
no, not the
like the same greater being. Like how do you view?
I believe that they're like we're all interconnected. We're all a part of this universal energy. For me, God is not a person in the sky. Even though if you hear me referring to God, I'll say He, and that's just because of my upbringing. I grew up in the church, but I was an atheist for probably from age 18 to 35. I was like a complete atheist. Didn't believe in God. I thought you were stupid if you believed in God. I had a business partner that I used to pray before every meal, and I thought he was a moron. But then after I've come to these awarenesses, I was like, oh shit, I had it all wrong, right? And the reason, no, it's not for me. I don't believe in God. It's like I know God. Like I know the power of the universe exists, and it's because I see it all the time. Like I see it in like everyday little synchronicities. Like I need an answer to this question, and then it comes to me, right? I need to figure out how to let go of my desire so I can, start living in a life of abundance, and it's answered. Like I see it time and time again. To answer the question with respect to is Buddha the same as Jesus, all these things. So they're different people, 100%, but they are all essentially the highest state of consciousness beings that you can reach in physical form. They both essentially teach the same things with a little bit of differences.
Right, I am finding out from reading more.
Yeah, so
into this. Have I ever sound like more of a meathead with that middle yeah, keep going.
Yeah, so like Buddha taught. So Buddha, the difference between Buddha and Jesus is Buddha moved to a level of consciousness of 1,000 to the state of like advanced enlightenment. Jesus was born at level of consciousness 1,000, right? So
Doesn't seem fair.
yeah, no, right, yeah. So, but it was like at a critical time, you know. So I think Jesus came around like 500 years after Buddha or something along those lines. So, but Buddha, like, you know, the story I love about Buddha was like he was this first prince that was, you know, in this castle, and he never saw anything that was going on, and then he decided to get outside of the castle and sneak out, and then the first thing he saw was someone that was sick, and he immediately developed the fear of death, or the fear of sickness or illness. Then he saw a dead person, he developed the fear of death, and then he saw a poor person, he developed the fear of poverty, right? And then so from those fears that he had that he never was even exposed to, he then went through the process of learning how to transcend all of those, right? And then he moved to enlightenment, right? So whereas Jesus was born at level of consciousness 1,000, and so that's why he was able to, you know, transform an entire, you know, society from, you know, like paganism essentially, and over to the greater states of consciousness. When Jesus came into the world, the level of consciousness of the world was like at 80, which is like really, really low, you know, and so. This is why they were murdering people in like the arenas and, you know, like all kinds of like really evil shit, right? And so one man at this high state, he can pull up an entire nation or entire world, and that's essentially what he did, right? So when this relates to, you know, where we're at in society today, it's like we have this great divide in our society with all this back shit, and you know, it's all over the place, and we feel the need that we need to kind of stand on a soapbox and tell everyone, hey, like this is what you should be doing, you know. But the best thing that you can do is move up the scale of consciousness on your own. Is like learn to let go of whatever it is that you're holding on to, and then naturally people will be drawn to who it is that you have become. Like Jesus wasn't promoting what it was he was doing. He was like, people were just drawn to who he was, right? So this is what's happened to me over time. This is why my coaching business, you know, grew quickly. It was people are like, what is it that you're doing? Like you seem to be like really loving life, you know. So I want to know what it is that you're doing, and so just naturally, you know, people start becoming attracted to you, and so you don't have to be pursue enlightenment to experience this, because you're experiencing it as well, right? Like you set the intention to want to help people, and people are like drawn to it, you know. So the best thing we can do to help humanity is to help ourselves, essentially. And how do you help yourself? It's like you begin to transcend the ego. You begin to understand that the ego has one primary function, and that's to keep you safe, right? And it does so in the physical world, but it also does so in the emotional world, right? Where it's doing everything in its power to prevent you from feeling emotional pain, right? But that emotional pain is what you need to transcend and let go of in order to maximize your potential. Like the universe is expanding at an infinite rate, right? It's just like continuously expanding. It's crazy. And consciousness, which is essentially we are a part of as these spiritual beings, like as these souls, we're a part of consciousness. So that should be an indication that our primary function as conscious beings is to expand and grow, right? And if we don't, then we struggle.
Wow.
The whole thing just makes me like how you explain it and how the way like your brain works and everything like that. It just like it makes me think of like as simple or dumb as it is like the Instagram like algorithm sort of thing. It's like if you just look up like income, like positivity, you look up workout tips, you look at all this stuff. Every time you go to your search page, it's gonna be those things, right? It's gonna be those positive things.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas if you were to just look up like fucking knockout fights and you know rioting and all this stuff, when you go to your search page, that's all it's gonna be. So it's like filling your brain with the same shit. It's like if you're exposing yourself to all these positive things, then it's going to continue to project positive things in your life. As opposed to you just fill yourself with news and negativity, then that search page in your brain is just going to project that negativity, and it's just going to make you feel like shit all the time.
That's like an amazing analogy. It's like really, really easy way for people to understand it. The one thing I will that's awesome. And the one thing that I will add to that though is positive thinking doesn't work. Okay, so people think now it does work in the sense that you're just talking about, but the problem being is that we have 70,000 subconscious thoughts every single day, right? So and 95% of our day is the subconscious mind is ruling the roost kind of thing. Like we are completely unaware. So enlightenment is about becoming more aware of what's happening in our heads, happiness on a more consistent basis, right? But usually only about 5% of the day we're actually saying, what is it that I'm saying to myself right now, right? So when you try and inject a few positive thoughts, you're fighting like a losing battle, right? You may get 5, 10 positive thoughts in a day against 70,000 negative thoughts. So the way to change what it is, what algorithm is, how the algorithm is working for you, is not to try and force positive thoughts into your subconscious. It's to understand why you're having the subconscious thoughts in the first place, right? So let me give you a practical example. So when I was a kid, I experienced a ton of shame around like the cars we drove, the house we live in, because my dad just didn't take care of shit. I think I've mentioned this before on this podcast. But that shame that I experienced, right, it was responsible for millions of thoughts throughout the course of my life, right? And those thoughts were all designed to protect me to never feel that shame ever again. So they were all like, I need to make money, I need to look good, I need to impress women, I need to be desirable, like all of these things, right, was all based around not wanting to feel that shame anymore. So once I eliminated the shame, guess what? I eliminated all of those thoughts that were associated with the shame. And now I had the room or the space to allow those positive thoughts to begin flowing in. And then I changed my algorithm essentially and started seeing, oh, look at, there's abundance all around me. Oh, look at, there's happiness all around me. So a big thing I think a big takeaway I think that people can grab from this is that happiness is not destinational. Okay. And that was where I got trapped for like the better part of my life, is that I believed that happiness was out there somewhere. Like once I made money, then I was going to be happy. Once I had the wife and the kids, then I was going to be happy. And then what I realized was that happiness is already within all of us, right? But things happen to us over the course of our lives, and it began to block or put that happiness down. Like you look at your two boys, right? It's like they're fucking happy as ever, right? And it's because they haven't begun to take on programs yet that start suppressing that happiness. But it already is within us. Even advanced states of consciousness already exist within us. It's about unprogramming from all of the shit that we've taken on throughout our entire lives to tap back into that happiness that is inside of us. It's like kind of like the analogy is it's like happiness or high states of consciousness are like the sun. They're always shining on us, but all of our programs and all of our belief systems and all the stories that we've told ourselves over time to protect ourselves is like the clouds, right? So what I do as a coach, what we do at Blast Camp is we start having people look at those clouds and be like, oh, look at, that's a cloud that blocked the sun from when you were a kid and your dad smacked you in the face. Oh, that's a cloud that blocked the sun for when you failed that test as a kid and you felt like you weren't good enough, right? Now, as you bring awareness to those clouds, the skies begin to clear just on their own because of the awareness alone. And then that sun that's already been shining on you this entire time, you begin to finally feel it again. Once you feel it, right? Once you really begin to feel the sun, you're like, oh my God, I'm happy. Guess what? You become the state of, someone that manifests, right? So it's like, yeah, so manifesting isn't about putting a picture on your wall and looking at it every day. Manifesting is like feeling the way you want to feel even before you achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. So if you feel like you're rich already, well, guess what? You're going to become rich.
And I think it's actually a Buddhist proverb too. I think it was like a lot of people confuse happiness with joy when happiness in fact is peace.
Yeah.
That was something I read recently, and like that really resonated with me because it is like the more peaceful my life is, the more I feel that happiness, that true happiness. And one of the ways to get more peace is by cutting like a lot of things out. That's what I found. It's not about like, addition by subtraction has worked very well. It's one of the things we learned in business. I learned that lesson over and over and over again as we try to go in all these different directions. And then the more we subtract, the more I seem happy, and actually the more we succeed. If you're going right around full circle and coming back to finances, it's pretty wild how that works. And same here, the more we simplify, the more, I simplify life, take away choices, the more things just seem to work out in my favor and inside and out.
Yeah.
Isn't it like you talk about, especially with relationships or friends, it's like, if this is even if you're good friends or good colleagues, like if this is your friend that you vent to each other about all your negative shit, it's like, what if you stopped talking to that person? You wouldn't vent.
Yeah.
Or you wouldn't, so you wouldn't bring up as many problems in your life to talk about, and you might start to overpass them. Like, oh, if I bitch to Tony all the time about, these shitty things going on in my life, and then I stop talking to Tony, maybe I just won't talk about the shitty things and I can start working on them and pushing through.
Yeah, 100%. So like levels of consciousness get attracted to each other. So this is why you'll see groups of people that are angry, right? Like this is something that my mentor always told me, that there's only two conversations happening in coffee shops. This is my opinion about this, and yes, I agree, right? It's because the second that you say, you know what, I don't want to judge people anymore, right? Well, now you no longer are attracted to that level of consciousness of judgment. And ultimately, the only reason that we're judging others is to try and lift ourselves up, because we don't feel good about ourselves. So we judge others to try and bring ourselves up. But when you recognize that, you're like, oh, well, why do I feel bad about myself? And you heal from that. Well, now you no longer want to hang out with these people that judge, right? So then you move into a new group. Now you move into the group of anger, and then you gotta transcend that group, right? And the angry group is like, angry at the world, and they're the people with the flags out front of their house that says "fuck Justin Trudeau" and all these types of things, right? But then when you transcend anger, then you start to move into different circles, right? And yeah, so you lose people along the way, but it doesn't mean that you judge or condemn those people. You still have love and acceptance for who they are, but just naturally, effortlessly, you start to move into different circles, right? So yeah, that's how you begin to transcend this stuff. It's not about really having to cut those people out. It'll just happen naturally. It won't be like, oh, you're judgmental, fuck you, I'm not hanging out with you anymore. It's like, well, let me release why it is I'm judging people or myself, and then naturally those people will fall to the wayside, and you'll move into different circles.
Man, this has been a pretty deep conversation. I think we could title it "Buddha, I Love This Guy." Maybe. But no, like backing out of that, just a touch, and man, like a place to go find peace. Like, just tell us a little bit of Lungovita, what's going on there, just before we wrap up this episode. I think people are probably interested in that. Surprisingly, so many people seem to know, but then also surprisingly, people are like, when I post it on Instagram, what is this place? Yeah. So what is this place? It is beautiful. Tell us a little bit about it.
Well, this is something that my business partner Andrew and I kind of like manifested, and over time we've been holding this idea in mind of like creating a place where people can come and like disconnect, and like especially in this day and age, we're so connected at all times, and we barely have time to let our minds like stop, right? So it is through the present moment that the unknown is revealed to us, meaning our mind can only exist in the past and in the future, right? So in order to get outside the circle of what we know, to connect to the unknown, we need to be completely present. But there's just not a lot of space to do that these days. And like, this is why you see like, flotation pods and these things happening, like flotation tanks and stuff like that, because people can't find the space to disconnect and get to the present moment so that they can have these, amazing moments in their lives. So we've been looking all over the world to where we're going to open up this place. And then all of a sudden, Kubota Park, which used to be a trailer park, came for sale. And, we put an offer in, no idea how we were going to get the money. And there was 5 other offers, and they took ours, right? And it was just like talking about synchronicities and support, right? Like it all just happened. And in 2.5 months, we converted a 16-acre trailer park into like a beautiful retreat center where we have, right now we have 23 tents that are all furnished. So it's like glamping, essentially glamorous camping. So you just show up, bring your bag and your food, and the rest is taken care of. And it's on right on Lake Erie, and it's just really like a place of peace. It's like a place to just sit by a fire and not be on your device or not have to listen to music, and just like to connect, and begin to take that step back and observe. And because of that, it's attracting all types of events, and we're having yoga retreats, and Andrew and I are going to be doing all kinds of stuff. And the ultimate goal of the place is we're going to have 42 geodesic domes, and then we're going to have the 23 tents. We're going to have a ton of units out there, right? And then we're going to have hot tubs, saunas, cold plunges. That's all coming, right? But right now we're in phase 1, which is just the tents, and we're in the process of renovating the building. So we have these common spaces, yoga rooms, showers, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's amazing, amazing place, and it's gotten a lot of attention, and it's been really busy. The weekends have just been jam packed. We've already booked like 15 yoga retreats, and we have like 3 or 4 already booked for 2022. So yeah, I really see it as like a place within like the city, which is awesome. It's also right in the middle of wine country too, so it's like this cool place to kind of come, and when you rent a tent, you get free kayak rentals, free bike rentals, so you can bike around to all the wineries and do whatever else. So
we had a great time. We went out with all of us, our big group of friends. We hit up we go that day. Pagnoni's
Yeah.
winery just down the street. We went swimming, we went kayaking,
Yeah.
we hung out by the fire.
Yeah. You were only there for a day.
Yeah, we weren't even there. Like literally, I don't think I was there 12
right.
hours.
Yeah.
And we just had an unbelievable time, and it was on just being out there on the water and in that area, and there was no Wi-Fi. I don't think it kind of just like we chilled right out. It was an awesome place. Super proud of you. It doesn't do justice the description of what it was to what it's become, and it's not even where you want it to be yet, which is pretty wild. So very proud of you, man, as your friend.
Yeah.
To see you doing that, and I hope more people can go and say. I know Irvin's gonna put that on the show notes for us.
Yeah.
A couple things. So if you like this episode, you like into deep conversations, highly recommend HQ Nutrition Focus. I take it for every podcast. I take it almost every day. I know Casey loves the stuff too. It's just nootropics. It's just brain food for you. Helps with memory, helps with your alertness and clearing that brain fog. And we do all these episodes sober, so it's actually even better. I'm finding better results of it since I stopped drinking the bottle. And then the other thing is we're gonna be doing some fighting tonight, some MMA. So if you like performance, you don't want to really be better than yesterday. 10,000 Clothing Company Canada. They're new to Canada. This stuff is the best performance gear for men that I've ever tried. So both of those, if you want to go to HQ, if you want to go to 10,000 in Canada, use code TANGO15 to save yourself a little bit of cash. Some of the best stuff on the market. So thank you, Dave, for being here with us today, man. This episode went like we know where we were going. And it went deep and it went awesome, and then it got very undeep real quick, and then it got back deep again. So thanks very much, man. It's awesome to be around. It's so cool to be like my good friend Casey, but three guys that went to high school are in this one room doing business together without really doing business together. It's awesome. So,
yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's it, man. Great episode. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Now's the time to do more and be more.